everything like that. It's actually the discussion the province of Ontario has. They need money, as you know, they are in deficit. So this legislation, we're talking about $2.3 billion of the money that is basically sitting in other areas, 905 areas or 613 areas. Right now, average land transfer tax in the city of Toronto is at 4% of the purchase price. So $1 million property, they pay about 40 grand. So the same $1 million in Richmond Hill is $20,000. So probably they're going to pass this legislation because they got the majority government also here in Ontario, early 2016. So embrace it as a good news. Every news that I get, I'm a type of guy, I always love to tweak it and turn it in a positive way. Take it as a positive way. Probably you should email this news if you Google it to all your clients. And basically, maybe you can encourage them to make decision fast. So that would be my morning news to you. So anyway, sorry to break the ice. Anyway, commercial real estate. I was asked to talk about the commercial real estate. Mr. Jaggi, thank you very much for your introduction. I've been doing this job now going to about 21 years. Almost about 65% of my business was commercial real estate. The reason I love the commercial real estate because I hated emotional discussion with the clients. You know, the wife comes and says, oh, I don't like the house. The husband says, oh, the house is not back to the ravine. And you know what, I don't like those discussions. I like the people that they have logical, and there are a few people in this room. Mr. Sophie is one of the well-experienced commercial guys, and is a part of the board of director. He's been doing commercial for years too, and I'm sure if you talk to him, he has the same feeling that he hated. It's a 9-to-5 job. So if you really want to get to the commercial real estate, it's a 9-to-5 job. That's the beauty of it. But it requires a lot of patience. You have to be patient. It's not a business that you're going to get your commission fast. From the time that you write the deal, by the time you get your money, it's probably, you'll be lucky, will be about 4 to 6 months. So what we're going to do today, we're going to find the commercial real estate, choosing and finding commercial real estate investment, commercial nuts and bolts, how the deal gets closed. Commercial real estate is quite a broad subject. Yeah, you cannot find, is contrary to the residential real estate. You can't just say, okay, can you find me a house in Mississauga? Can you find me a house in Oakville? In commercial real estate, there are people who are specialized in leases. There are people who are specializing in land development. There are people who just specialize in selling the business. Every category is different. And that's why commercial practitioner, when you talk to them, 90% of them, the one that they are full-time in this and they are professional, they tell you, I don't do any business for sale. I only do leases. I don't do any land development. I do only maybe condominium assembly. So it's not something that everybody tried to tap in because it's so much detail, so much information. So this morning, we're just going to basically touch the surface and the basic of the understanding of the commercial real estate. Type of the properties that are involved in the commercial real estate: multi-family residential, single-family residential, office, industrial, retail, recreation, land, net leases, agriculture, and building. So what's happening? Why right now this commercial real estate is becoming really big in the city of Toronto? For the last probably 5 or 6 years, the commercial real estate was really on a flat market. In the last probably 2 years, tremendous growth in the commercial real estate started from the people who were in the residential real estate. People built their wealth, they got extra money, and now they are saying, okay, shall I choose the stock market or shall I go to the commercial real estate, or what we call it real estate investment. It could be any aspect of it. So more homeowners are becoming sophisticated and they say, okay, let me ask my agent where I can invest my money, where can I park my money. So there are different key players are created or they are now back in the game. The number one is a syndication or joint venture. Unfortunately, are not notorious for this category because we don't like teamwork. We pretend we like teamwork, but we don't like teamwork, okay? This is the best area if you can work with your database and talk to your clientele base and say, look, you got 100,000, you got a 50,000, you got a 20,000, I got this proposal that you cannot have single-handed handle it. You got to have collectively put your money together and do it. Then there is the multi-residential unit corporation or partnership, which is a condo development as the best example. Single-family homes that can be rented for long-term investment. This is a very simple version of one guy that basically going to buy several properties and ask you to manage it and rent it for them. Then we talk about the new condos, cash on cash return, custom home, and the land developers. So I'm going to briefly talk about the joint venture or syndication. So joint venture and syndication is a very simple formula. You know, whatever money you put on the size of the property, depend on the size of the property, you will get the proportion of your investment as a rate of return. Let's say 5 of us, each of us, we put $100,000 and the property is $3 million. So if we are 5 joint venture, so we each collectively are responsible for 20% of the expenses, and also will benefit 20% of the rate of return coming back. A lot of Iranians are now, I refer to the Iranian, I'm not sure if you're not Iranian this morning here or not, a lot of people are now going towards the land development in the city of Toronto. Iranian, they have a really good appetite for the land development. Be careful with the land development. I have seen and I have heard a lot of people pay a lot of money because of the notion of, yes, this is a land by 150 by 200, you can put a 20-floor high-rise over there, or you can put 15 townhouses over there. It's a very complicated matter. When you go through the land development, it's not like a single home, a custom-built home. Custom-built home, I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. You basically go to the city of Toronto, you apply for the minor variance, which is called the Committee of Adjustment, and you basically get your approval, and based on the coverage that is allowed in that area, so you build one single-family home. Now you got suddenly a land that you think, or the agents, they think that they can develop it. Land development is required the site plan changes. The site plan changes meaning that the city of Toronto or any municipality doesn't have the jurisdiction to change that site plan and zoning. And it has to go to the Ontario Municipal Board. The way it works, first you gotta hire a planner, you gotta hire an architect, and you go see the city staff, they call it. The city staff, you basically have a sort of an informal meeting with them, and you basically explain to them what's your intention are. And make sure if you're putting an offer for a land development, it's a conditional on a due diligence, and that's the most important condition. And the due diligence, you have to explain also to your client, they may spend about $20,000 to $30,000 money up front, and they still go meet the city planner and the staff, and then they come back, they said, forget it, you cannot do anything with it. So you gotta prepare their mindset. The real commercial investor, they don't care. They spend $50,000, $20,000, $30,000, $100,000 in some cases, and they walk away from the deal because they don't want to buy something that they are tied to it for $10 million, $5 million, and then they can't do anything about it. This process could take almost about 2 to 2.5 years. So once you meet with the city, then the city will give you a certain guidelines. They want all kinds of reports from you, from environmental, from the geotechnical, from heritage, if it's close to heritage, zoning, anything you can imagine. Once you do that, then the city staff will run. It takes almost about 6 to 8 months to get all your package together, ready for the city. Then the city staff will write a report. So and then they have to send this report to the councillor that is presiding for that ward, for that area. The city councillor, under the rules in Ontario, is mandated to create a public meeting. They post on the property, there are going to be so and so such a date, there's going to be a public meeting, and they actually send a mail out to every residence in that neighborhood, in that ward. So public comes, 90% of the time, public is against your proposal, but that doesn't mean that you cannot go ahead with your project. The city staff report is the crucial part here. The city staff report, if there is a precedence in the neighborhood, they are in your favor. But still, the city cannot give you the green light. So a residence with the filing an application of the $175 can take you to OMB. And 90% of the time, One neighbor will take you to OMB. Councilors are now trying and lobbying for the last 2 years to abolish the OMB. Kathleen Wynne promised that he will not do that. You know, she promised so many things. This morning also she broke one of her promises, so it's going to be double tax. I don't know. I hope they never abolish the OMB, because OMB is a sort of an ombudsman that basically supersedes the city planning. If it's left to the city of Toronto for some of these planning, nothing will get approved. In particular in the Toronto. I'm sure some other cities are notorious too. One of the most notorious cities is Richmond Hill. They're against any development that you can imagine. So the land developer is a very key part of that you should really study and research.
آیا شرکت‌ها یا اشخاصی هستن که شما بتونید هایر کنید برن دنبال این کار؟
Yeah, so once you go for a land development, that's a very good question. The number one, you got to hire a planner. The planner costs you about $50,000 to $75,000 for one project, depending on the size of the project, an average size of the project, an architect. But the planner is the crucial part. The planners, they have done these kind of work. Most of them, they are ex-staff of the city, and they have studied urban planning and a city planning and a development planning. That's what you need from these people. So you gotta hire. You can't go, sometimes you go have a meeting yourself with the city staff, and you know, they tell you, the answer from the city always is like this. When you go sit in front of them, they said, put your application. They're never going to tell you, yes, you can do it, or no, you cannot do it. They're never going to tell you a definite answer. So, what are the objective of all these investors that they are out there in a commercial, what they want? They basically want to create a multiple stream of the income. So you need to know the component of the managing of the property portfolio. One of the biggest money that is now sitting out there on the table, and the Iranian agent, they fail to do that, is managing the property. Everybody, including some of my agent and my own office, when I tell them, why you sold hundreds of these condominiums to these people, to these investors, why don't manage it? Everybody's notion is, oh, come on, Steve, for $1,500, half of it to me, $700, it's not worth it. I have one agent in my office, not Iranian, and he manages condominium, which there is no competition right now in the city of Toronto. A lot of investors are tired of going through so many tenants, not a good quality tenant. So what he did, he decided to basically focus on that business. Last year, he managed 73 condominium, and he made $304,000. He charged 8% for managing their condominium. So let's say $1,000 rent comes, he takes $80, he gives them the difference. He managed a plumber for them. And for him, it's very simple. I asked him, I said, how you do it? He said, I hired the staff that I have that I pay $35,000, and the staff simply is a coordinator. Basically, call the plumber, that we have several plumbers, go fix it. Every time the plumber goes fix something, you add 10 to 15% also administration charge to it. So this can apply not only for condominium, for any other properties. So property management is quite lucrative, but you got to start building that portfolio. It doesn't happen overnight. So I would definitely recommend that you do that. Discuss ways to build the network through buying and holding. Holding. Commercial people, they never sell. If they sell, they never put the money back, put in the bank. They basically retransfer it and they buy something else. Always old days, when I had this very old client that used to go to him, and I said, Michael, you know, it's a time for you to sell. Remember, we bought this property for $200,000. Maybe now it's $1 million. He comes to me and says, sell. Come to me and says, okay, let's diversify. I sell this, but what else do you have for me? So this is a very good, don't think your clients, they gotta buy and sell all the time so you make money. No, if they hold it for you and then you do the property management for them, you still make money through them. When they hold it, there is an appreciation of the value. Through that appreciation of the value, they can borrow more money and then they can go buy another property. Understand the tenants look for, what's the investor looking for or should look out for. Determine market value and rate of return on residential and commercial property. Right now, the rate of return on a commercial property, which we call it in the old days cap rate, is basically, you'd be lucky, it's maybe 3.5% or 4%. Nobody anymore calculate on a cap rate on the investment. People calculate on a cash-on-cash return. So you buy a $3 million property, you put $1 million cash. If your income on $1 million that you put, people always get confused on the cap rate. Why do you need to know, understand the cap rate? I put $1 million of my money. The rest is the bank money, it's not my money, who cares? So if I'm on my $1 million, I make $8,000, that's an 8% cap rate, cash-on-cash rate of return. So sell them on a cash-on-cash rate of return, not a cap rate. Cap rate doesn't exist. Cap rate right now with the increase of the value of the property, really it's gone. It's basically 3%. Identify opportunities in a different market. Stop concentrating. Commercial guys, they don't care where is the property. It's a math game for them. You can, many of you right now, if I ask you, how many of you work, let's say in Ajax? Anybody works in Ajax? Yeah. Anybody else? So, Omid also works in Ajax. So a lot of people, they don't work in Ajax because personally, we feel, oh my God, no, I can't go there. That's not a great area. Why should I go there? If I don't buy for myself, why should I buy for the client? Commercial people, they don't care. You show them the math. The math works, they'll buy. So don't, yes, of course, everybody wants Ali Ring and they want along the Young and Bayview corridor, which good luck. You know, you can't find for those prices anymore. Zoning rules and regulation. If you really want to be, if you go sit in front of a commercial investor, those schmooze talking of the residential cells doesn't work. You better know your game. And at the beginning, this is my recommendation. It happens to me every day still. I speak on behalf of some of my own agents. They called my office, they said, oh, I got a $5 million guy that want to invest $5 million. I said to them, okay, refer it to the commercial department. 90% of the time, they don't. And guess what happened? You lose it. Commercial real estate is not on MLS. Commercial real estate is a network of the handshake. Okay? We used to do basically a lot. There is everything handshake in a commercial real estate. A lot of residential real estate, they said, oh, we hate these commercial guys because they don't share anything. That's true, they don't share anything. It's a very pocket, private club, and the one that they trust with each other, they basically call each other. And many of us, we used to have not even a contract with the seller. We go see the seller say, yeah, if you bring me an offer, I sell it. Yaya go see the seller say the same thing to Yaya. And then everybody who talks and whoever brings the offers win the game. And we used to trust each other. We used to pick up the phone and call each other and say, look, Yaya, I got this property, so do you know anybody? Go for it. So if you really don't know how to find the commercial property, my recommendation to you is at the beginning, refer it to somebody else. Don't you rather to refer it to somebody that service your client, or do you rather basically not to find them the property and one morning you wake up and they tell you, I'm sorry, last time we bought it from somebody else. And that's what happened. The commercial people, they don't wait. I can tell you that. They don't wait. They really, when they got their mindset set for investing their money, they go somewhere. Doesn't work. Unless the represent doesn't work this one anymore. Go next one. What did they consider? Return on the investment, cash and cash, refinancing, value appreciation, depreciation and recapture, tax deferment, and amortization. When they look at the cash, not necessarily they look at on a positive cash flow. Some of them they look at the refinancing portion of them. I'll give you an example. We did a property on Queen Street, downtown Toronto. We bought the property for $1.9 million, okay? Because the client had a portfolio of the other commercial properties, we went back to the bank, and it happened only about 6 months ago, so I don't think it happened all day. We went to the bank and we said, okay, look at the client. The client has a great, strong commercial portfolio. They want to renovate this building. They want to put $1 million improvement into it. So it cost about 2.9. But the client has one question. The client doesn't want to put a dime as a down payment. They want everything you finance. The bank look at their portfolio, the bank did the appraisal and says if you spend $1 million and improve this building and increase the density of this building, what is the future value of the building? And the TD Bank of Canada actually financed the entire project 100%. 100%. Actually, it was funny, when they closed, you know, they received almost $85,000 also money from the lawyers for, I don't know, something that during their agent what they did for them. So it's not always about cash on cash. Ability of the refinancing, appreciation of the value after renovation you do. Some investors, they buy commercial property for tax reasons. They rather actually lose money. Their portfolio is so huge, they make so much money that they want to actually buy a property that they lose some money and they will adjust some tax on that. So they look also the management required and time effort, active versus passive, leases, quality of the tenants, rents and duration. When they do the financing, or some of them when they buy the building with the tenant, they look at the quality of the tenant. If let's say your tenant is a AAA tenant like a Tim Horton, they love it. Tim Horton, for example, give you an example of the Tim Horton. Tim Horton is notorious in the industry. Tim Horton, well, they pay 9% of the sales of their gross sales of their store as a rent. That's their policy. They go to any landlord, they pay literally peanuts rent. But they tell the landlord the idea that I am a AAA tenant. When I come to your building, when I come to your plaza, the value of your property goes up by 20, 30%. So, and some of the commercial investors, they like that. Down payment amount, we just give an example of the down payment, financing leverage, vacancy rate, and use permits. Future value of the properties depend on the use permits. So in the future, what can you do with that property? Can you increase the density? Can be assembled with another parcel of the lands or adjacent property to build something over there? Or no, it just has one use. If it doesn't have a multiple use, it's not a great appetite for investors. Location, sound structure. When it comes to the financing, it's not like a residential home. The type of the structure of the property didn't quite matter for the bankers. The banks, they really cares about the condition, utilities, public transportation, parking. Right now, so I don't know how many of you know about the McGinty's. I'm sure you've heard about the green belt, but there is a big issue when Mr. McGinty came to the government and he's no longer, so he basically created that green belt. But the green belt enforced that every density happened south of the green belt, or we should say basically happen all around the arteries, that they're basically going to be a future public transportation. So right now there is a LRT going along Eglinton Avenue. So when we talk about the public transportation, up to last year, nobody was looking at the Lansdowne. Have you heard about the Lansdowne on Bloor? Okay, Lansdowne on Bloor was notorious. Nobody wanted to go to that neighborhood because all the drug dealers, all the prostitution, everything was happening in that neighborhood. Lansdowne and Bloor market has picked up by 30% since last year to this year. Why? Because of the subway artery. 2 subway lines are closed there. All the developers, small developers, they don't allow you height. They allow you only 7 or 8 story building there. A lot of people are going to that neighborhood. So these are the areas that you got to research. For public transportation and the city development is a public information. If you go to the city's website, you can actually read the whole package. Where is the future planning of the city is going? And that's where you have to buy properties. Highway 7 is another artery that is really going strong. In particular on the Vaughan side, subway is going Jane and Highway 7. People, the big developer, they start buying 5 years ago. Anything that you can imagine north of Highway 7 from Dufferin to literally Jane is sold at tremendous prices. You wouldn't buy an acre for $250. Now they are selling an acre for $1.5 million to $2 million because it's on the subway artery. There is a discussion between the city of the Markham, Richmond Hill, and Vaughan. Because of the 407 and Highway 7, you don't have to expropriate too many lands. They want to actually put a an LRT on Highway 7 connected to Jade Subway, which basically connected the city. So those are the areas that you gotta, if you wanna be in a commercial real estate, you really gotta concentrate. Pulling your team together, you need a big team. Solicitor, be careful with the lawyer in a commercial transaction. That's your number one enemy. It will kill the deal as fast as you wrote it. Because majority of the real estate lawyer that you guys work with, they have no clue about the commercial real estate. They can't even read an agreement. They can't even negotiate an agreement. Because most of them, with all due respect to them, are just basic average residential lawyer. Some of you are much more better than these real estate lawyers that I've seen in the industry. You make sure you got a lawyer that understands the commercial real estate. Otherwise, it will kill the deal. So research that. Mortgage broker, lending, you can't do with the regular lending guys that they are doing in your market. A real specialty. Lenders, not everybody lends. Major 5 banks only lends to the people that they have a comfort zone and they have really a portfolio of them. So you got to go to Home Trust, Capital Lending, you got to go to Street Capital. Insurance agent, environmental consultant, engineering inspection, planner, architect. So you better have this team, because this is the team when you want to convince your commercial guy, go with this deal or not to go with this, you got to have a meeting with all of them, maybe before that. Investing in rental property, pros and cons. 3 key advantage, you pay less taxes. Majority of the commercial guys, they prefer not under personal name, under a holding company, an incorporation. So in an incorporation, you pay less tax. You pay about 15.5. If there is a surplus, you pay 15.5 then. You may be able to deduct the losses for your tax purposes. Your tax bracket for all your expenses is much more higher than personal. You get a regular monthly income if there is a positive cash flow. And liability, I forgot to mention over there liability. You have a lot less liability. But financing is going to be much more difficult if it's just a holding company. It usually wants a personal guarantee of your client's fund. 3 key disadvantage. You take on the responsibility and challenges. A lot of new people in a commercial game, they said, oh my God, I spent the $2 million for all this headache and all these hassles, and my income is only $50,000 at the end of the year, versus I go, Steve built a new home, and flip it, I make $200,000, so no, I'm going to build a home. Those games are all over, guys, okay? I'm sure you heard Talk louder. Don't know what that is. Tabrizi is recording. So a lot of in a single home detached. So, but you got to remember, the era of the flipping the properties is literally over because of HST. Some of your clients, maybe they did good, but I'm telling you, be careful, it's over. The Revenue Canada is after all these speculators, all these flippers, okay? If you do a proper commercial game, you pay your taxes. Simple, you do through the incorporation, you collect your HST, you pay your HST, because the other people that you deal with them, they have also HST number. So, you know, you pay, you collect. It may be difficult and costly to sell the property later on. It's true. If the market change, the commercial properties are always going to take longer to sell, because if there are 100 people out there on the market, 10 people are only in the commercial market. It may be difficult to refinance them. Again, if the market changes, yes, the financing for them is going to be difficult. How to set the commercial loans, okay? So, research your option. Select again the best lawyer, failing to have a definite plan. And a definite plan, what is the definite plan? Most banks, they want a business plan from your clients. They want to make sure what's the pro forma, how much money you are putting, are you experienced, how much rate of return, what type of quality of the tenant you have, what are your other assets are. Failing to have a business plan, not having cash ready to put into the project. They want to see some cash from you. They don't want to necessarily see the cash in your bank account. They want to see if you have some assets in other properties, if you need to cash out, so you have some cash coming from there. Failing to negotiate the best deal, going straight to the familiar lender. Make sure you don't go to the regular lender. If you leave the trace mark of your application all over the map, then nobody is going to lend you any money. Not checking with the small, if you are in the small business loan, not checking with the small business loan. Anticipate use of the property, anticipate return from the property, geography, we talked about all this. What the lender mostly look at the debt service ratio. They like to see 1.2 to 1.3 ratio on a debt service ratio. Appraisal, when you do the appraisal for the property, a regular appraisal doesn't cut it. The appraisal cost usually for commercial properties anywhere between $3,000 to $5,000. So environmental report, there are 3 reports, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 is basically one guy basically look at the map and simply says, yes, there is a dry cleaning next door. I warn you that there might be some leakage of the chemical contaminated to the property next door that you are buying. For just doing a written report, a basic report, it could be anywhere from about $3,000 to $5,000. If they have to go to the phase 2, which they go usually to the basement of the property, and they do a bore drill, and they take a sample of the 1 foot of the soil, and they test it at a lab, it could be anywhere from about $8,000 to $15,000. If they have to go to the phase 3, which they go excavate in the property, they take a huge sample of the dirt and the soil and everything, and they test everything, it could be anywhere between $30,000 to $50,000. What is the debt service ratio? The debt service ratio is a net operating income minus the principal and interest payment. That's the property ability to repay the debt. As an example, $5,000, and if you got each unit, give you $600. So, and they always, the bank, they allow the vacancy rate. Some bank, they allow 5%, some bank, they go as high as 15% vacancy rate. So, less expenses paid by the owner, 30%, and then you will see it comes, your income minus the expenses is $2,340. Now, the debt services is $275,000 at a really high rate of the mortgage rate for 25 years amortization. That's your mortgage payment. So they look at your net income divided by your principal and interest of the mortgage payment. That's your debt service ratio. So if it's 1.2 to 1.3, they like that because that 0.2 and 0.3, that's their buffer zone. They like to, they see some cash that is available there. We talk about phases and fees. Broker fees. With the commercial real estate, the broker fees are totally different than the residential. There are crazy charges, application charges. Many of the commercial lender, they don't want to deal with your own lawyer. They said, yeah, you go get your own lawyer, but our bank wants to deal also with this lawyer. And your client pays not only for your own lawyer, pays for our lawyers, pays for the lender's lawyer. Suddenly you see for a $2 million loan, you have 3 lawyers that are involved in that game. Terminologies that you should be familiar, these are the basic terminologies in the commercial real estate. Common area maintenance. Common area maintenance, many of you that bought on Ward and Young project that basically got upset and got pissed that, oh my God, why they are, they told us 500 square feet unit, 500 times $500 square feet is $250,000. But now the statement of the adjustment at the lawyer's office is $275,000. Where is the $25,000 is coming? Common area maintenance. The builders, if he's rented to you or selling it to you, it will charge you common area maintenance. Common area maintenance, either for sale or for carrying monthly, is the area that all the tenants they use. From the entrance door to the hallway to the washroom, everything. And let's say the building is 1 million square feet and your unit is only 500 square feet or 5,000 square feet. They calculate the proportion of it and they charge you based on the proportion. Usable square footage. Usable square footage usually is used in the commercial leasing. It's basically the area that 4 walls. Basically from the interior. They don't include from interior, by the way. The 2x4 studs, they go from 4 inch behind the wall, they calculate even behind the drywall. They go from the bare bone wall to the bare bone wall, and then they calculate based on that. Escalation clause. Escalation clause is a clause that again we use in a commercial lease. It's when the rent goes on an annual basis goes higher. So you in a commercial lease transaction is not a residential lease transaction. It's not subject to the Ontario Tenant and Land Tribunal. The commercial guy can negotiate at the beginning and can say, you know what, second year I want $50 more, third year I want $100 more. So you have the ability to negotiate. Tenant improvements. Tenant improvement is the work that tenant does and is subject to the approval of the landlord. In many cases in a commercial real estate, on a tenant agreement with the commercial big guy, you have the ability to force the landlord does the tenant improvement for you at no cost. So what they do, let's say they are asking $10 per square foot plus the TMI, and they said, okay, we'll do it for you. Basically, we finance your $50,000 leasehold improvement, but instead of $10, give us $12 per square foot. It makes sense to do it that way, guys. Do you rather want to pay $70,000 or $100,000 from your own pocket, or just pay over 5 years to the landlord? Let the landlord do it. Full service rent is a rent that inclusive of everything, meaning utilities, TMI, taxes, maintenance, insurance, everything. You cut a check every month and that's it. Gross lease. Gross lease is a very similar to full service rent, but except doesn't have the utility part to it. Utility part to it is basically paid by the tenant. Net lease, that's the worst lease. And the landlord, they love that because you pay the rent, you pay the land transfer, you pay the taxes, you pay all the maintenance, everything is on your shoulder. It's a lower rent if you are in a very good and new building. But if you are not in a new building, my recommendation, go with the full service rent or a gross lease. Non-compete clause, I'm sure you are familiar with it, is a clause basically if you're doing a business for sale. One of the areas that I didn't touch really is a business for sale. If you really want to get to the commercial real estate, start with a business for sale. This is the beautiful part for this country. A lot of newcomers, they come to this country every year, and a lot of them, unfortunately, they can't get absorbed in the businesses that they were in their homeland. You know, engineers, doctors, and you know what? They go basically buy a small business, they create a job for themselves. If you specialize yourself in a proper franchise, don't represent any mom and pop shop business because it's really take a lot of your time. But if you do really good franchise, you know, Second Cup, Timothy's, Burger King, McDonald's, if you represent those good franchise, there's a tremendous amount of money in that business. The commission in a business for sale is 10%. It's a standard 10%. Anybody does it less than that is not worth it. And they turn around with the business for sale, if you're specialized in a franchise, is great. For competition, you hardly have any competition. If you look at it, out of the 42 or 48,000 realtors in the city of Toronto, maybe you'll be lucky, maybe 500 of them are in the business for sale. So the non-compete clause, it comes in that area that if you sell a business in the future, next 5 years, in the radius of the 4 kilometers, you can't have a similar business in that area. Letter of intent. This is the most familiar piece of paper that we do on a daily basis in a commercial transaction. We don't write the offer anymore. And old days we don't write the offer. We say why we should waste the time writing an offer. We do a letter of intent. It's a 2-page letter. Your name, the seller name, the address, and the most important intention that you have. You want a financing, you want a due diligence clause, when you want to close a deposit. And you write, it's a simple letter. And you sign it, your client sign it, your commission, and you send it to the seller. And the seller basically, and there is usually a clause in the letter of intent. It says then in the future, if they agree on the letter of intent has the binding of an agreement of the purchase and sale. That doesn't mean that if the seller signed it, the seller tomorrow can see another letter of intent. No, it has a full force and a binding. And then the lawyer, they go to the battle and they draft the agreement of the purchase and sell between each other. But it's a very simple piece of paper that make your job a lot easier. BOMA, a lot of people are wondering how the landlord how when the building is sold to you on the condominium basis, on a commercial, what is the BOMA? BOMA is a Building Owner and Manager Association. They do the calculation of the square footage. Sometimes you have seen on the offer, it says the measurement will be verified prior to the closing by BOMA standard or by architect. You know, they tell you on the listing it's 1,500 square feet, and then on the day of the closing, they come and say, I'm sorry, it's 1,570. And you can't argue about it. You can't just say, oh, take the 70 square feet, I don't want it. No, you basically got to accept it because you accepted the BOMA clause. Substantial completion. Substantial completion is in the building, when they develop the building, when the building is safe, that you can move in and has all the accessibility, is not completely got the occupancy certificate, but is almost there. Base building is also, the landlord will tell you, I'll give you the base building. The base building usually is a 4-wall, no drywall, no T-bar ceiling, power come to the unit, and the HVAC ductwork is sitting on the roof, but there is no distribution. Cash on cash return we talk. General partner and limited partnership. So if you do syndication for your friends, for your clients that they want to do a partnership, they got to do a limited partnership agreement among themselves or a limited partnership incorporation. In the limited partnership, they have to appoint one person as a general partner. The general partner is the big chief. He takes all the responsibility, he's a president. He takes all the responsibility, he has all the liability, and the limited partner are just basically there to give him the money, or they are, his assistant. But the one person got to be the general partner. We talk about the cap rate. So cap rate, just for you to know, net operating income divided by market value, which is gone. Clauses. There are a tremendous number of the clauses, but some of them that you should be familiar. The parties is very important in a commercial agreement. Who are the parties? You can't just suddenly say 123 Ontario Inc. This Ontario Inc. is a holding company. Tomorrow can have a different officer. There has to be a clause drafted to address if in case of the default, if in case of litigation, if in case of dispute, who are the director of those people, those incorporation. Dispute resolution. There is always an argument in a commercial agreement, and usually it happens between the lawyers. So you need a clause that it says that both parties, they act in a good faith and in a reasonable manner. Otherwise, you won't get anywhere. Once you have that dispute resolution clause over there, they have to act in a good faith. Properties inspection, fire, building condition. Fire and a building inspection by the City of Toronto or any municipalities is essential for the insurance company. Insurance company will not insure you if you don't have the fire certificate. If you also, sometimes the building goes. Environmental issues, insurance, leasing, due diligence. Be upfront with your client in terms of when you put the due diligence, don't put it vague. Oh, my clients want to do 30 days due diligence. Due diligence for what? Due diligence for going to the city, find the zoning. Due diligence for checking the tenant. Spell every word out there so you know what's happening. Financing. There is no way 5 days or 10 days financing clause will work for you in the commercial real estate. You'd be lucky 21 business days. Be lucky. Go further. Go 30. Go 45 days. By the time you get all your documentation, all your duck in a row, and give it to the bank, it takes almost about a week to 10 days. You guys get prepared before just give it to the bank. Price allocation. On a business for sale, you sell a coffee shop for $300,000. What is the goodwill? What is the leasehold improvement? What is the price of the business? If out of that $300,000, the bank will only finance the leasehold improvement. So you got to make sure out of the $300,000, $225,000 is the price of the leasehold improvement, because you get 90% of the financing on that. Buying the land or the business. So when you buy the business, sometimes it comes with the land too. There are some liabilities that you have an as-is clause. As-is is quite important in some of the commercial transactions because the landlord or the seller just tell you the way it is, where it is, as is. They don't want to take any other liability. Don't take the as is clause in a commercial transaction because it could affect the environmental, it could affect the financing, so you gotta do your due diligence. Everything with the financing, we used to say this in old days, we used to say, okay, we are working with the 10 clients, but we write 11 or 12 mutual releases. We didn't know where the other 2 mutual releases were coming from. But we wrote maybe for one transaction at least 5 or 6 mutual releases before it happens, you know. But once it's happened, it's really happened. The reward in a commercial sale, it's anywhere, the commission are not 5%. The commission basically, your buyers, by the way, don't be afraid in a commercial transaction when you do a BRA, if you do ever a BRA. There are 2 types of BRA you can do. So don't scare them, say, oh, I want a BRA blank, that you only work with me, you don't work with anybody else. No, you can do a BRA that basically says on a confidential agreement, there's a confidentiality agreement and a BRA that you tell them whatever I introduce to you that you are obligated to buy through me. You want to go talk to as many people, go ahead. And then documents and trail and everything. And just tell them to the buyer, this property is not available on MLS, you pay me. They gladly pay you. We Iranians, we have hesitancy to ask for money from our buyers. Start asking, they pay, they don't care. You know, if you find them a property that is not out there on the market, why not? They pay you. The sellers usually, they pay you the same way. They pay you anywhere between 1% to top 2%. There are cases of the 2.5% or 3%, but very rare. Why the commission is lower? Because the price tag is a lot higher. Lawyers. Although the lawyers are your biggest enemy, but the lawyers are also your biggest friends. You want to get commercial leads, you better start mingling and networking with the good, heavy hitter lawyer in the city of Toronto. Why they like to work with you? Because they want to share your commission. I have agents that basically every time we sign the commission trade, we basically divide the commission to 3. One for a buyer, one for seller, and I see this lawyer's name all the time. But this guy knows a lot of developer. This guy has a lot of contact with the people, and basically picks up the phone and says, you know what, we got this, you want interested or not? So mingle with a lot of good lawyers.
Seriously,
Go ahead.
how about demolishing clause?
Yeah, you can do, yeah, on a commercial, if you're leasing for a long term, make sure there is a demolishing clause over there, because in particular, even leasing or buying a business, reference to the demolishing clause, big mall, Cadillac Fairview has a demolishing clause in all their lease agreement inside the Fairview Mall or any of their properties. It says if you buy a $500,000 franchise, let's say Second Cup, if I decide to renovate the mall, I don't give you a penny. I will just only give you an option to relocate you from this corner to that corner. Sometimes you can negotiate and it says, okay, if you relocate me for the time that my business is down or for cost of my renovation, you have to pay me the money. Those big guys, they don't give you. Small landlord for demolition clause, they give you a cap. They tell you for next first 5 years, we have no intention of demolishing the building or the land or the plaza. Yeah, you can put it in there. That's a good one. Closing contingency. Don't ever put the seller solicitor review of your commercial offer. He will kill your offer. I guarantee you that. 9 out of 10, he will kill your offer. If you want him to be in the game, when you assemble your team, have a meeting with him in advance. Make sure he understands. You see, the lawyers, they get the offer from you. The only thing they do, they just read the clauses. They have no understanding really what's happening out there in that transaction. They see all these wording, they said, oh, it's not protecting my clients. Oh, I'm gonna change the wording like this. Oh, I'm gonna do this like that. And it doesn't work. We had a case for one single family development home, a custom home. The lawyer didn't understand even the letter of the Committee of Adjustment. Was making a huge argument about it, and literally kill the deal because it says, oh, no, you got to go based on this letter. And our argument was saying, okay, we go based on this letter, but subject also to all the zoning and the setback and everything. So make sure, I wouldn't put it unless I feel comfortable with that lawyer understanding. Financing contingency, approval contingency, representation and warranties contingency. Representation and warranties is huge in a commercial transaction. If the seller has any knowledge something might happen to that piece of land, something happening in the surrounding area, if receive some letter or some proposal from the city that they might affect the value of his property. HST. Everybody always argue about this HST. In a commercial transaction, if your buyer is an HST registrant, they don't pay any HST. It's a wash. It's called the joint election form. So the government, provincial and federal government, HST is not your money, it's not my money, it's the government money. We are just simply a carrier. We grab it, we transfer it. But as long as the both parties are registered, nobody collects, nobody pays, as long as you got this clause. If they are not HST registrant, the buyer, they have to pay, and then later on, if they become the HST registrant, they can claim it back. That's about it. Any question that you have that you want to discuss? Or I go pretty fast, I'm sorry. Commercial is boring, so. Question is, McDonald's will participate with people or not? Some franchise, yes. Some franchise, they don't do it. McDonald's may participate with you if you go to McDonald's and say, you know what? I'm representing a big land developer that they got this beautiful piece of property, they are developing it, and I think the McDonald's can be one of the best tenants. Yeah. Everybody don't think that they don't, in a commercial transaction, don't assume that nobody will cooperate with you. A lot of people will cooperate with you. You just got to reach out. Really, the number one activity in the commercial real estate is the networking and mingling. You got to go out, you got to choose a lot of these people. There are these VPs and these people that are decision maker, dinner, lunches, and that's what happened. Anybody else? Any else? Thank you.
لطفاً چند دقیقه تحمل کنید. خیلی ممنون. Steve, thank you so much for such a beautiful presentation and such a knowledge sharing. Steve always is doing his best to share his knowledge all the time, no matter if he's in the seminar or is in the private gathering or the board meeting brokerage. Richard Silver is a very well-known person in this innovation, and he will deliver his knowledge on December 1st. Paperless real estate. Please register at the Picra Network, and we'll be happy to have you here in such a beautiful place in December 1st.